Hello, Steam Workshop members. This is Madman9, showing off my Axebow Discovery, which is my tugboat version of an Axebow ship. Axebow meaning that the ship looks like an axe, and if you look at the front, we dive down on there, you'll see that the bow actually goes down in the water this way, and then it levels out. The model is based off of a design that is used in several navies and even a few of the folks use it for like whale wars and stuff. The primary reason of this design is that it cuts through waves. So the whole intent here is that when there's waves going, it'll go through the wave and not over the top of them. And this ship here is made to mimic that feeling, though it's inside of Stormworks. So of course the design's a little bit different. So my intent here today is to show off the ship a little bit, show you how it works so that you can use it in your missions. The intent of this is to be a mission runner ship instead of for looks. It's more for functionality. And let's get started here. We'll start here at the stern of the ship, and I've got a full diving operation here. We have dive lights that'll help you if you're doing an underwater base of some kind, which that's actually what this ship is built for. Is we're going to be building an underwater base. And this will be one of the just tugboats helping support that effort. DAC here is also the connector and then the stern line. We also have a power connector with its own breaker. This does not operate with the breaker off, so remember to turn the breaker on, which is right there, and then we have disconnect and then in and out, of course. Up front here we have the two tow lines. The idea of this is in real ships you'll use dual tow lines so that the wire doesn't go across the deck. So that's what this is here. This is the connector. So if you undo that, you'll see that it drops, and then you can connect the two wires together. And then on this actual connector, you'll see that there is a button that actually controls the tow line and the magall, and that this actually controls this upper section. So you can take it and connect it to whatever you're towing. Right here is the fuel ports with a release. And then on this side, you'll see that you've got each of the tanks. To start the game off with this version, the center tank is all that's filled, with the two outer tanks are empty, mainly because the center tank has got more than enough fuel to last quite a while. The intent of this is the engines are all set up to be very, very fuel efficient, very, very fast. So because it's fuel efficient with very low RPS, we don't need much fuel. This will go about 300 kilometers. Or so on one center tank of fuel, but again, you can fill it up to get the two starboard and port tanks full, which I believe adds up to a total of around 48,000 gallons of fuel. So coming onto the bridge, I do have push button doors that may or may not change depending on people's comments. The reason this is I often leave doors open, and the bottom door has enough drain capacity in the bilge system to take it over. Up here, with these doors open, if the ship did list over, which it could do, it would be in big trouble. So that's why those are push button. So just to give you an idea of what's going on in the control area here is this is the GPS control station. I only have a GPS, don't have a heading hold or anything like that yet. It might come in the future, but right now it's not needed. Here we have a spotlight control with the fire sprayer. If you look, you can see the controls there on the left. My spelling is terrible, so you just have to look past that, but this will control the water gun, and it has its own pump, of course, and then a spotlight, which is also independently controlled. And there's a button for the fire pump, and then again another one for the spotlight externally. Most of the button controls have an external button that you can then see if it's on or off. Here we have the anchor control station, anchor line, depth under keel, anchor up, down, magall, and then I've started including the magall force. I'm starting, if you're using that as a tow line, it's good to know how much force you're going before the line will snap off, or if you're anchored in rough weather, you can let the anchor line out in order to avoid having any issues. Next here, we have a high-speed gear. The system is a diesel-electric. Right now, we have 5 different engines on board, and they're sequential. There's no need to, it'll just run itself. But the high-speed gear will give us a top speed of around 22 knots. future adjustments may lead to more speed out of this thing, but right now it's 22 knots. And really at 22 knots we start losing power. So right now I'll go ahead and get us moving. So the way that works is this controls the throttle speed, and then it's set to a PID, which will set the speed up there. And then on the helm you have a separate control which will actually control the thruster independently. The ship has thrusters and rudders. The rudder control is the primary one, which uses the WAD. WS is the throttle control, so if I turn this off, you'll see the throttle goes to zero, the thruster power goes to 0. If I'm hitting the W key right now, the thruster power will increase, and then I can control it, either way. One technical note for now, is you have to turn off I would turn down the thruster power before re-engaging the cruise control. And then again, if I turn off this high speed gear, you'll see that this thing is going to compensate by going to full throttle. The speed goes down to about 6 knots, sometimes about 7. The reason that I have a high speed gear and a low speed is primarily, you can hear my engines cycling on. The primary reason why we have a 2-stage gear is while you're maneuvering with the thrusters to prevent the ship from rolling over. So the real intent there is you have more control over the throttle while you're trying to do maneuvers. So that's an important factor there. Excuse me. While we're cruising out here, I'll go ahead and shut us off. Moving next, up here we have the rudder position, and that's the artificial horizon, and then that's our speed, which I accidentally did that, so I'll put that back to 0.1. So up here we have our fuel tank control. The fuel tanks have a fuel port, so if you fill up those port and starboard tanks, the fuel ports will be used there's a balancing system on board that tries to balance the fuel flow. All the fuel has to go from the outer tanks, goes into the center tank, and I'll show a cutaway of the ship later for that. With the this is being the overall value. So right now, again, we have 13,055 liters of fuel on board, with again the 2 side tanks adding up to another 15 or so, and that's bound to change based on the configuration of the ship. But for now, that's what it is. And then it'll automatically balance, so if this one has more fuel than this side, and I believe it's a setting of like 100 liters, it'll turn off that tank, and it'll only draw from a tank that's got too much fuel, help balance you out. Then over here you have your we have our battery control and generator output. The ship puts out about 480 charge. I'm not sure if that's amps or whatever the game uses, but about 480, 460 to 480 depending on the charge. And then again, here's your motor control. We have 4 motor controls, the 2 prime units, then we have a secondary port, secondary starboard, and then the topper generator. Essentially, the way this operates is each one of the generators, these are 2 small generators, which you'll see a little later, and these are the big generators that actually run the big motor, and then the topper is a 40 charge. These are 200 apiece, and then this is a 40 charge aircraft engine that is basically made to take you up to, right now it's set to 90, it'll turn off at probably about 99, and then that's what this target charge is. So if you're trying to charge batteries on a barge or do something like that, you can set this to, instead of being the default, which is 95 inside of the chip, it's 95. You can set this to whatever you want it to be. So if you don't want that topper engine to come on, you can shut it off here, and then it'll shut off as needed. But it uses a PID loop to get as close to the target as it can, and then it'll overcharge, and then it'll shut down. So right now we're at 96%, and essentially that'll be adjusted. These percentages will change based on different outcomes, but we're making 18 charge. Well, as we get downstairs, I'll show you how that all works. But it's all custom chips, and so it was quite a bit of work. Let me go to the center station here. This is the ballast control. The ship has 2 different stabilization methods. The first one is a ballast control, which actually fills tanks. We have a port starboard. We have a center tank. We also have a bow and stern tank. The way that it works is essentially on these keypads, you can adjust the heights. And then here is the enable is your basic port, starboard, bow, stern. And then the depth control will actually change the depth of the ship, which is controlled right here from the depth control. So here's the center depth. So right now we're at a center of -2 meters. Here you would type in, if you want it to be like -3 meters, you would do the adjustment to -3 meters, which will start filling that center tank. as soon as I turn on depth control. It'll start filling the center tank to get us down to that level. The way that this works is we have port and bow depth control. These are adjustments. So this is an actual setting, depth setting, where these are actual adjustments. So the idea is if you want your bow to go down 2 meters, you would type in -2 here, and it would lower the bow by 2 meters. Or if you wanted it to rise by 2 meters, you would type in a +2. And then this will do the port being the left side of the ship in this case. If you want the port side to go down or up, you can change that there. And so the way that this will work is it'll keep filling that tank on the opposite side of what's needed, and it'll drain the opposite side. So it's a pretty good system, works pretty well. As a backup system, we have a drain all tanks. So if something is going wrong, you can disable these, drain all the tanks. Make sure this is the pump control for all the pumps in the ship, so make sure to leave that on. Then what this will do is this will drain all the tanks. So I have that as kind of a backup. Ship's pretty balanced right now, but if you add load and cargo on, that's how that adjusts, and I can show you that chip later. The light up here will show you if the system is filling or draining any tanks. So if any of the valves are open, it'll be showing up right there. So back here we have our active stabilization control. So here on the side of the ship, you see that little fin there, and when I hit this button, it will lower those fins. I'll go ahead and do roll enable here, and we will scroll here with the camera. And if you look, that is our fin control right there. Have a warning light. If you notice, it's brightly colored, so that I forget it. And the bottom is blue, so it blends in pretty well. This system is made mainly for the roll control to keep you balanced as you're going into turns. And what we'll do is I'll go ahead and get us going again, and we will this time go full throttle. And I'm going to get us to go. We'll go over here. So the way the GPS works, of course, you put in that. You hit the button, light goes on. And if you look, this is us turning. If you look, very little list. If I come over here, turn this off, that's how much more we're rolling. So that's the way that works. You can hear our engine cycling on. I'm going to re-enable the roll control. So the system works pretty well for keeping you stable left and right. It's really especially important for towing. If you look here on the gauges, these are the actual positions of the fins. Right now they're in the down position. And then right here we actually have the control. This will actually give you the angle of the fin. So if you look, you can see it adjusting for itself at the -1 level to keep us upright. Here's our 21.9 knots, 22 knots. And here you can see we have 75 and rising charge with 414 charge. And if you notice, it's going to rise, and that's rising because the battery is actually rising. We have all batteries on, or all generators on, except for our emergency generator, which is the port generator. The small generators all are independent battery, so if you screw up like I do all the time and I do something wrong, all you have to do is stop moving, go ahead and start that generator, and then that generator will have enough charge to get everything else going for you. So both the secondary generators are completely independent of the actual onboard battery. I don't have an indicator yet for that because I kind of ran out of space, but I will be adding that in time. Here we have a mid-level, mainly our working level. We have fire equipment, we have some of our diving equipment, and then right here you have your scuba equipment, which of course now goes out to the back deck, where we have our magulls and everything else. Working our way down, this is the battery room. I use medium batteries mainly for balance. So this is in the balancing the ship, keep it nice and stable. And then here's our two, as you can call them, like pony generators, but these are the two tiny ones. They produce 14 charge apiece. Again, this side being our backup, this side being the first. This is the true topper generator. Here we've got the control equipment for the ballast tanks. Here's the actual ballast tank level. So if you look, the bow is filling because the ship is leaning backwards. And if you look, we have water going to the port and water going into the bow. Again, the opposite tank's full. The left side is the full, and this is the drain. So I've got them labeled. And then on this side, we have our next generator, and then here is the fuel loads. And then this is a flow control. Shouldn't really have to adjust this, but if you're filling the tanks and the fuel's not moving around, you can use that to kind of help balance it out. Up here in the front, right now we have a power control room. Gauges don't work yet, but all the breakers are working. This is probably going to get rearranged, and then in front of this is if you look, you see the water in there. This is the bow, the actual axe bow part, and it has to be empty in order to keep the ship floating properly. So let's work our way back to the back. Oh, up above us is the air. So these are air vents for the actual intake for the all the generators, which are back here in the stern. Back here, we have a little work area, a couple medical beds. That's the bilge pump system, a little passenger seat. On this side, a little bed and passenger seat. No other interior work yet. The ballast tank actually sits behind this wall, so there's kind of there's some space challenges to kind of work out the interior. So this will probably be changing a little bit. And that side has the of course the port or the starboard tank. Back here's our generator room. Pretty busy room. Here's our main generator. If you look, we're at full power, 385 and rising, with RPS of 2.6. That's about as low as I can get it for the power range that has to output down to about 74%. Less than 74%, the overdrive or the econ mode will turn off. If you look at this, it'll see that it roughly doubles it. Econ mode is only enabled, or it's enabled individually, which is the first gear set, and then the second gear set is when both are on. If you look, there used to be 2 generators stacked. I was able to remove one whole generator through kind of optimizing. Then the way that this cycles is this generator turns on first, this one second, and then this one based on setting. So this generator here will then turn on. You won't always hear it. When it enables, it spins up. If you look, we're at 100 or 1.8. See how it turned on without needing the starter. That's the idea, is that it should be pretty effortless when it runs. I'm going to move that pipe, don't worry. But back here with the aircraft engine, if you look, we have full throttle. What it does is got a PID loop, which will start slowing down the motor as you get closer to the set point. Set point right now is at 95. It's just at default. And you can see there's our output of 43, and then our temperature and RPS 2.57. Again, this one has a wide range too. It's a little bit, the most fuel efficient one is this left one. This one's second most, and this was the third most. And then the 2 pony ones in the front, even though everybody sips fuel pretty well. If you look, that's our actual motor controls. We have 2 medium motors connect to a drive system, and then underneath there we have the third drive, and then it's connected through a series of gearing between there as you throttle up. So that's the engine room, and I think that completes the lower half of the ship. There's part of the bilge system. All the empty compartments on the ship do have a bilge, automatic bilge system, and then down here you can see the system's operating. It's off right now because there's no water coming in the ship, but that'll read pressure when there's water being pumped out. There isn't right now, luckily. And so if you come back up here, one other thing to show, here's our lighting control. So I did do a red light system in here, and then I have the regular white lights, the deck lights. Then back here I have a little tow control area. What this is you've got your winch controls that are redundant to the lower half, and then you've got, if you're coming into port or something, you can pull in your load. There's your tow lines, and then your dual winch line controls. So the idea of this is just sort of, if you're up here operating, you can come back here, make sure that your ship's back there. We also have the spotlight right there for the line, for whatever you're towing, and you can change the angle as necessary. Right here you've got your this is your dual line control with your deck mags, and over here you've got your deck lights, and then circuit breaker, and then another mag control. Everything's got circuit breakers in hopes of getting struck by lightning it'll not impact you too bad. What I'll do now, I'm going to go ahead and take back over the helm, and I'll show you a little bit of the bad weather kind of situation. So we'll go up to like 47 on that. I'm going to check so that system's on, and what we'll do is I better turn off so the autopilot. One little note on the autopilot: if you need to take control, it'll let you take control. You just have to make sure to re-zero it out before the GPS will turn off. we've gotten to our destination. But turn into the waves. The ship. The problem with the axe bow versus other ships is the axe bow has a tendency to be very fickle when the waves are to its port or starboard side. But it's very efficient through the waves going forward. It's kind of a design decision that you have to make. So if you look, this is the stability of the ship. If you look, we're not bobbing too bad. As an example, what I can do is I'm going to turn this system off, which will stow the wings. And this is how much we're moving. So if you look, there's the wing there stowed away. It just blends in there. So this is the design of the ship, is really to cut through the waves. We're still averaging 20 knots or so. We're kind of going up and down a little bit. You will have to slow down through heavier waves, but this is 40 to 50. I think is pretty typical in this game, and if you can get it staying this fast is pretty important. So if you look, we're not slamming. The axe bow is resistant to slamming on the wave, which is sort of when you hit the wave really hard. So we're resisting the slamming, and we're going pretty quick. I'm going to increase us to, we'll just go to 100. Now at 100, you do have to slow down the speed because of of course, the physics in the game are very fickle. If you look, the front of the ship will have a tendency to dive in the water through the wave. So there's another. See how we shoot through the wave? I guess we're going a little fast. I generally disable cruise control during storms and try to just use your power control instead. So we'll see here. We can keep going about 12. Be a little fast still. Let me slow down just a little bit. So, like the game, like everything else, we do have the issue of, the physics being a little bit bad. But the idea of this ship is it does want to cut through the waves a little bit more than going over the top. So in really rough weather, you can sometimes get going pretty quick. Then I'll come back here and re-enable the pitch and controls. So. Now we should start getting a little bit more stable in the water. Because of the ship's, size, it's a pretty small vessel, but it's because it's made to be a tugboat. You are going to be fighting these waves, no matter what. But if for us, for what we're looking to do, which is going to be pulling barges, doing things in rough weather, that's why we've gone with this design. Pretty stable when it's towing as well. So I'll go ahead and stop the bad weather for now. And then I'm going to show you some of the maneuverability that we're capable of. So I'm going to get us to actual full speed. Make sure all of our engines are on. So this will be at 24 knots, which is slightly too fast. And then what I'll do is we'll do a full turn. So this is a full rudder turn. Really, really stable. For a little bit extra, I'll turn the thruster. And then this is a full speed thruster turn, so really, really maneuverable on that side. And then if I disable this gear as we slow down, I can go ahead and turn our thruster, which is right here. Its position is located right here, to know where it's located. And if you look, we can basically just turn literally on a dime. The front of the ship is almost not moving. So. Again, this is what the ship's made for. It's made to be very maneuverable, to get you in and out of towing. It's not the prettiest of ships. I like it, but some folks have complained. But the idea here is really more about the functionality, and we'll work on the other bits later. So you hear our engines cycling back on. So that's my little axe bow. I really hope that you guys out there download it, and I really hope you use it. To me, it's really a testament to what you can do in the game. I'll have another video here in a couple of minutes showing some of the chips and stuff that I used, mostly custom chips. So if you look, this is the it looks like we're still turning, but the control system will eventually level us back out. During rough seas, sometimes the ship will develop a list from you know, different, the fuel like being fed out too much from one side or whatever. And I will be fixing that out as time goes. So if you notice, we're running out of battery a little bit, but that's it. That's the axe bow. Thank you for watching.